The night Rebecca showed up at his door with mascara running down her face, Aaron realized that friendship had always been the coward's way of saying something else. Aaron Chen was 38 years old. He restored vintage motorcycles in a rented garage behind a hardware store in Portland, and he had been alone long enough that the loneliness had stopped feeling like a problem and started feeling like a personality trait. His marriage had ended 4 years earlier when his ex-wife admitted she had fallen in love with the idea of him rather than the actual person who came home smelling like engine grease and wanted to spend Saturday nights organizing carburetors. The divorce had been quiet and fair, and Aaron had taken the lesson to heart. He had learned to keep his distance. He had gotten very good at it. Rebecca had been his friend for 2 years. They had met at a bookstore reading where neither of them had actually wanted to hear the author speak, but both had wanted the free wine. Mustaper Sendan de Sirindin. She worked in graphic design, laughed at his jokes about motorcycle brand logos, and never once made him feel like he needed to be anyone other than exactly who he was. She was 34, recently out of a long engagement to a man who had treated her life like a project timeline, and she had the kind of smile that made you feel like you had just said something worth remembering. Aaron had noticed all of this. He had noticed it so carefully that he made sure to never do anything about it. It was a Tuesday night in October when everything that had been quietly true became impossible to ignore. Aaron was in his apartment, halfway through a reheated burrito that tasted like the cardboard it came in, when someone knocked on his door. He opened it expecting a package. Instead, Rebecca was standing under the porch light in a green jacket he recognized, her face streaked with tears, her breath coming in short, uneven pulls. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know where else to go. Aaron stepped aside without thinking. Come in. She walked past him into the small living room, and he caught the faint smell of rain and something floral he couldn't name. She stood in the center of the room like she had forgotten why she came, and then she sat down on the edge of his couch and pressed both palms against her eyes. Do you want water? Aaron asked. Or tea, or... He broke up with me, Rebecca said. Aaron sat down in the chair across from her. The apartment was too quiet. The radiator ticked softly in the corner. Connor? She nodded. Her hands were still covering her face. He said I wasn't emotionally available. He said I was holding something back. I see none. She laughed and it came out broken. He said it felt like I was waiting for someone else. Unter Instant, Aaron felt something cold settle in his chest. Rebecca, and the worst part is he's right. She dropped her hands and looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed and bright, and there was no anger in them, just exhaustion. He's completely right. Ansanderdien, tende intins. The radiator ticked again. Aaron did not move. I spent 6 months trying to make it work with him, Rebecca continued. He was kind. He was steady. He did everything right. And every single time he tried to get close, I felt like I was lying to him. No? She wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket. Because I kept thinking about someone else. Aaron's throat felt tight. Who? Rebecca looked at him for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, "Are you seriously asking me that question?" The apartment seemed smaller suddenly. Aaron could hear his own heartbeat. He opened his mouth and found he had no idea what to say. "I know you don't feel the same way," Rebecca said. Her voice was steadier now, but there was something fragile underneath it. I've known that for 2 years. You made it very clear. You're my friend. You want to keep things simple. I get it. Rebecca, but I can't keep doing this. She stood up, and Aaron stood up with her automatically. I can't keep pretending that this is enough, because it's not. And it hasn't been for a really long time. Aaron felt like the floor had shifted under him. You never said anything. Because I didn't want to lose you, Rebecca said. She was crying again, but her voice didn't break. And I knew if I told you, that's exactly what would happen. Because you're careful, Aaron. You're so careful. And I love that about you, but I also... She stopped. She shook her head. I can't be the person you're being careful around anymore. The radiator ticked. The rain outside tapped against the window. Aaron looked at her standing in the middle of his living room, and he realized with sudden horrible clarity that he had been lying to himself for 2 years. He had called it friendship because friendship was safe. He had called it distance because distance meant he couldn't get hurt. But the truth was simpler and far more damaging. He had been afraid. You're right, Aaron said. Rebecca blinked. What? You're right. I was being careful. He took a step toward her, but not because I didn't feel it. Because I felt it so much that it scared the hell out of me. She stared at him. Aaron, I told myself we were friends because that felt manageable, he continued. I told myself I was protecting both of us. But really I was just protecting myself. He stopped in front of her. They were standing close enough now that he could see the faint freckles across her nose, the way her breathing had gone shallow. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I made you think you were the only one feeling this. Rebecca's expression shifted. Something uncertain and hopeful moved across her face. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I'm an idiot, Aaron said. And because the last time I tried to build something real with someone, it fell apart. And I didn't want to risk that with you. So you risked nothing instead, Rebecca said softly. Yeah. Aaron felt the weight of it settle. I did. They stood there in the small apartment with the rain tapping the window and the radiator ticking in the corner, and Aaron felt like he was standing at the edge of something he had spent 2 years walking around. Rebecca's face was still streaked with tears, but she was looking at him now, the way she used to look at him across the table at the bookstore, like he had just said something worth remembering. Can I ask you something? She said, after tonight, I feel like I should be nervous. Das sind. A faint smile pulled at her mouth. You probably should. She paused. Are you always this careful? Depends what I'm trying not to break. Her smile faded. She looked at him for a long moment and then she said very quietly, for the record, I'm not made of glass. Aaron felt his chest tighten. He reached out slowly, carefully, and touched the side of her face. Her skin was warm. She leaned into his hand just slightly, and he felt the last 2 years collapse into nothing. I don't want to be your friend anymore, Aaron said. Rebecca's breath caught. Good, because I don't want to be yours. He kissed her. It was not careful. It was not distant. It was 2 years of truth finally allowed to exist. And when she kissed him back, her hands came up to grip the front of his shirt like she was afraid he might disappear. The rain tapped the window. The radiator ticked. And for the first time in 4 years, Aaron felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. When they finally pulled apart, Rebecca rested her forehead against his. Her breathing was uneven. I thought you were going to let me walk out of here. I thought I was too, Aaron admitted. And then I realized I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. She laughed quietly. That's the least romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm out of practice. Good thing I'm patient. They stood there in the center of the small living room, and Aaron felt the careful architecture he had built around himself over the past 4 years come apart. It was not violent. It was not painful. It was just gone. And in its place was something he had forgotten he was allowed to want. What happens now? Rebecca asked. I don't know, Aaron said, but I'd like to figure it out with you. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Her eyes were still red, but the exhaustion had been replaced by something brighter. That's all I wanted you to say. 3 days later, Rebecca's phone buzzed while they were sitting at Aaron's kitchen table drinking coffee that was too strong and eating toast that was slightly burned. She glanced at the screen and her expression tightened. Connor? Aaron asked. She nodded. He wants to talk. Aaron set his mug down carefully. Do you want to? I don't know. Rebecca stared at the phone. Part of me thinks I owe him an explanation. You don't owe him anything, Aaron said. But if you want to talk to him, I'll understand. She looked up at him. You're not worried? I'm terrified, Aaron admitted. But that's my problem, not yours. Rebecca smiled faintly. You're getting better at this. I have a good teacher. Austin Solder in Indatnin. She reached across the table and took his hand. I'll tell him the truth. That I should have been honest with him from the start, and that I'm sorry. And then I'm coming back here, Rebecca said, because this is where I want to be. Aaron squeezed her hand. I'll be here. At sitan iderbrisins. She met Connor at a coffee shop near her apartment. Aaron spent the next hour and a half in his garage pretending to work on a carburetor he had already rebuilt twice. He was tightening the same bolt for the fourth time when his phone buzzed. Rebecca. He took it better than I expected. Said he knew. Said he could see it every time I talked about you. Aaron stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, Aaron, are you okay? Rebecca. Yeah. I feel lighter. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Aaron set the phone down and leaned against the workbench. The garage smelled like oil and old metal, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt like he had stopped running from something he should have been running toward. When Rebecca arrived, she walked into the garage and straight into his arms. Hi, she said against his chest. Hi, Aaron said. How'd it go? He told me I was an idiot for waiting so long. Smart man. She pulled back and looked up at him. He also said you better not screw this up. Aaron smiled. I'll do my best. That's all I'm asking. 6 months later, Rebecca moved into Aaron's apartment. It was a small space, barely big enough for 2 people who owned too many books and not enough shelves, but they made it work. She hung her design prints on the walls. He cleared out half his closet. They learned how to share a bathroom sink and argue about whose turn it was to take out the garbage. And every night when Aaron came home smelling like engine grease, Rebecca kissed him hello and asked about his day. One evening in April, they were sitting on the couch with takeout containers spread across the coffee table when Rebecca said, Do you remember the night I showed up here crying? Pretty hard to forget, Aaron said. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't opened the door? Andersondens. Niederstidens. Aaron set his fork down. I think about it all the time. And I'm grateful I did. He looked at her. The lamp by the window cast warm light across her face, and he thought about all the careful distance he had built between them, and how none of it had ever been worth it. Because you were right, I was afraid. But losing you would have been worse than anything I was afraid of. Rebecca leaned her head against his shoulder. For the record, I'm glad you're not careful anymore. I'm still careful, Aaron said. Just not with you. A year later, Aaron took Rebecca back to the bookstore where they had first met. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the same author was reading from the same kind of book neither of them cared about. They sat in the back row with free wine in plastic cups, and when the reading ended and people started filing out, Aaron reached into his jacket pocket. I have something for you, he said. Rebecca looked at him curiously. What is it? Dasser den Nasendream. He pulled out a small wooden box. He had made it himself in the garage, sanded and stained and lined with felt. Inside was a ring he had picked out 3 weeks earlier after spending 2 hours in a jewelry store trying to explain what Rebecca would actually want. I know this isn't some big romantic moment, Aaron said. We're in a bookstore. There's bad wine. The author's still signing books in the corner. Rebecca stared at the box. But I don't want careful anymore, Aaron continued. I don't want safe. I want you, and I want to build something real with you. So if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm done being afraid. Rebecca's eyes were bright. She looked at the ring, and then at him, and then she smiled the way she used to smile across the table 2 years ago, like he had just said something worth remembering. Yes, she said. God, yes. Aaron slipped the ring onto her finger and she kissed him in the back row of the bookstore while the author signed books and people milled around with plastic cups of wine. It was not glamorous. It was not cinematic. It was exactly what they needed it to be. Later that night, they sat on the couch in the small apartment with the too many books and not enough shelves, and Rebecca rested her head on Aaron's shoulder. "I'm glad you friend-zoned me," she said. Aaron laughed. "Why? Adekauser didim akkerdichin." "Because it gave you time to figure out what you actually wanted." She looked up at him. And I got to watch you stop being afraid." "Best decision I ever made," Aaron said. "Opening that door." "Second best," Rebecca corrected. "The first was asking me to stay." Outside, the rain tapped against the window. The radiator ticked in the corner. And Aaron thought about all the careful distance he had built and how none of it had ever protected him from the one thing he had been most afraid of, which was loving someone enough to let them matter. What would you have done if someone you had been keeping at a distance showed up at your door and told you the truth you had been too afraid to admit? And have you ever realized too late that the person you needed was right in front of you the whole time? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.